Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to make the alley top. There is a tutorial for the alley A-line dress which goes a little bit more into depth with each step. This one is a little bit quicker. This top has pleating around the tummy area, a flared sleeve and a cowl neckline, and it's perfect for materials such as jersey or modal. Anyway, let's go get started. For this top you're going to need about 1 meter to 1.5 meters of stretch fabric, a sewing machine, some sewing pins, a hook and eye, a ruler, measuring tape, washable fabric pens, iron, and some bias tape. So for this project I chose to use a jersey. If you've seen the tutorial for the alley dress, it goes into a little bit more depth of how to cut your materials, but for this one we're doing the same but cutting out the top part. All pieces are cut on the fold and we're ending up with one front, one back and 2 sleeves. Find where your pleats land, and using fabric markers or your heat sensitive markers you can draw a straight line from the left edge to the right edge of the front pattern piece. Once you've marked out all 6 lines, you're going to start pinching the first line and pulling it down to meet the second line. On your pattern piece this will be the full line pulled down to meet the dotted line. You can go ahead and pin them across the full way. Don't be afraid to take a little bit of extra time here and make sure that all of your lines are perfectly straight. Once you've got it all pinned down, I take it over to the ironing board and give it a light pressing. Once we've got the pleats somewhat in place, I go ahead with my basting stitch and really loosely stitch down my pleats. This is to make sure they don't get crumpled or fall out of place while we're running our garment through the sewing machine. Here we're going to line up our shoulder seams. These are not on a perfect curve, so you might need to manipulate them into place a little bit. But once you've got it all pinned down, you're going to sew it at a 1 centimeter seam allowance. To find the center line at the back of your top, first find the midpoint between the shoulders and the midpoint between the neckline and draw a line touching each point. I like to add a strip of fusing to the back of this seam to add a little bit of stability to the material. Then go ahead and slice down the center of the seam, creating a 10 centimeter opening at the back. You can go ahead and pin your bias tape to the edge of the slit. When you're sewing this, pull the slit out into a straight line so the bias tape lines up perfectly and there's no crumples or gathers. After you're happy with how your slit looks, you can move on to your armhole and you're sewing this at 1 centimeter seam allowance. Next you can start pinning your side seams together. Start pinning at the wrist and work your way all the way down to the hem. Don't forget to keep your pleats flat when you're sewing over them, and we're sewing this again at a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Alright, so your top should be looking like a top. All that's left to do is our hem. We're going to do a rolled hem on this again. Everything is going to be repeated for the neckline, the wristline and the waistline. So the first step is to fold your hem up by 0.5 of a centimeter, and then we're going to sew in the middle of that full line and then press flat. The second step is to repeat this, but we're folding it up again by 1 centimeter and sewing 0.9 of a centimeter in from the edge, all the way around the waist, the 2 wrists and the neckline. Once that's all done, you can go ahead and give it a good pressing. I like to press it down everywhere across those pleats, every seam, every hem, and just make sure your fabric's looking nice and flat and not crumpled. Then the very last step is to do our hook and eye. I just sew this on by hand with a piece of thread. It's really easy to do and it makes it a little bit more secure. I like to position the hook and eye right at the top corner just so that you keep the shape of the necklace. And then once that's done, we can start tidying it all up by cutting any loose threads at our seams and taking out those basting stitches. You can try it on, make sure it fits, and you're ready to go. So thank you so much for watching this tutorial. You can give me a follow on TikTok and follow my Etsy if you'd like to download this pattern. And I definitely can't wait to see any of your creations, so please post them and tag me and let me see what you've made.